Hi, and welcome to the Anime Bar. On a rainy evening in England, 1868, a man is seen laying half dead in a ghastly accident alongside the ruins of his carriage and escort. A plumpy man and his wife comes upon the gruesome scene. The plump man starts harvesting valuables from the man's body, while his wife tells him that a woman died in the carriage trying to protect her child. But he doesn't seem concerned. He sees a stone mask in a suitcase and throws it away, thinking it is not valuable. The man regains consciousness and thinks the plump man is trying to save him. He introduces himself as George Geostar. The plump introduces himself as Dario Brando. George rewards Dario by giving him a pass to come to the Geostars for help. As soon as he makes the promise, the stone mask awakens. 12 years later, Dario falls sick, while George survives the accident but his wife dies. Dario's son Dio cares for his father by playing chess to get money for his father's booze. George's son Jojo sees a girl named Irina being bullied by some men. He quickly rushes in to fight for her but ends up being beaten to a pulp, especially when the bullies discovers that he is a rich man's kid. Dario gives Dio a letter that will get him favored by the Geostars before he finally dies. Dio arrives at the Geostar's house. Jojo tries to befriend him, but he is met with hostility. George introduces Dio to Jojo as he tells him how his father saved him 12 years ago. Dio comes with the intent to steal Jojo's life as he starts to perform better than Jojo in all aspects, including boxing. He beats Jojo's hands down, capturing the attention of everyone and isolating Jojo. As Jojo slowly begins to lose himself to loneliness, he finds love with Irina, but unfortunately Dio ruins it by stealing Irina's first kiss in the presence of some men. She quickly uses mud water to clean her mouth, which annoys Dio, and he smacks her really hard. Irina starts avoiding Jojo due to the feeling of guilt. Some men laugh at him from the jest. He realizes that it is Dio's doing. He runs to confront him, and a battle unfolds between them, with Dio dominating, but the tides of the battle turns when Jojo lands a headbutt. During the battle, Dio's blood splashes on the stone mask on the wall, and it causes it to awaken. Dio starts to cry from defeat. As he draws out a weapon to hurt Jojo, George separates them as he sends them to their rooms. Dio retaliates by trapping Jojo's dog Danny in the incinerator as it burns. Nobody knows who is behind it, but Jojo knows it is Dio's doing. Dio is still surprised that Jojo could beat him. 7 years later, Jojo and Dio are both grown physically. They are seen playing the American football. From the commentators' comments, it is deduced that they are both in their final year in university. They both cooperate as they win their final game in the university. It appears that they have found a way to coexist, but they both still bear grudges against each other. Unfortunately, George falls sick. Dio keeps preventing him from seeking proper treatment in the hospital. Jojo notices the symptoms of the illness are beyond common cold. Jojo embarks on a project to discover the purpose of the stone mask. During one of his research, he discovers the letter Dio used to gain entry into the Geostar house. Meanwhile, Dio collects George's drug tray from George's butler and swaps a drug on it while going to George. Jojo confronts him about George displaying the same symptoms Dario displayed before his death as seen in the letter. Despite Dio's denial, Jojo still catches on. He takes the medicine from Dio and vows to discover the composition and an antidote as proof for the police. Before he embarks on his journey, he assigns some doctors to take care of George. Meanwhile, Dio plans to use the stone mask to kill Jojo as he poses a threat to his plan of taking over the Geostar family fortune. On Jojo's journey to unveil the drug's true nature, he fails as several universities could not decipher the drugs. He could only discover that the drug is an Asian drug. He comes upon a street named Ogre Street, considered to be an abode for dangerous criminals. Jojo is attacked in the street, but manages to gain their favor as they show him to the seller of the Asian drug. Meanwhile, his butler already reports home about his journey into Ogre Street. Dio seems happy as he is certain he will be killed there. That evening, Dio staggers along a lonely street as he drinks. He bumps into two men who attack him for being rude. Dio decides to test the power of the mask. He sheds the blood of one of the men on the mask. The mask activates and attaches itself to the other man. He loses consciousness as Dio turns away. The man regains consciousness as he had turned into a monster with incredible strength. He starts to suck Dio's blood, but immediately the sun gets up. The man fades away. Dio meets Jojo at home. Jojo accuses him of poisoning George, as he now has facts to back him up. Jojo reveals that he has administered the antidote to George already. Dio then decides to lure Jojo towards him in order to use his blood to activate the mask and gain its powers. He begins to cry and admit his failed plans, but a man who followed Jojo from Ogre Street, named Robert Speedwagon, warns Jojo not to go near him as he suspects he is lying. George arrives with some police to arrest Dio. Dio lures Jojo towards him and pulls a knife to stab him, but he is protected by George. So he uses George's blood to activate the mask. The police shoots him, which renders him unconscious. George gives Jojo his mother's ring with his last breath. One of the cops wails as he says it is his fault George got killed. He reveals that George has already encountered Dario before the accident, and he purposely adopted Dio, knowing fully well Dario did not save him. George finally dies. Robert discovers that Dio's body is no longer on the floor. He raises alarm, but unfortunately Dio is already transformed into a monster as he kills a cop. Battle unfolds between him and the police. They discover that he regenerates quickly. After great resistance from both parties, Jojo, Robert, and Dio are left standing. Jojo sets his house on fire. With the aid of the intense fire and the Geostar family guardian angel statue, Jojo conquers Dio. Robert brings Jojo to his home since his house has already been destroyed by the fire. Later that night, he decides to check on Jojo. He discovers a lady in his room treating him. Jojo regains consciousness and recognizes the lady as Arena. Arena expresses her happiness to see him again. Meanwhile, in Whitechapel, London, Dio seems to have survived, as he is seen giving power to a man named Jack the Ripper. The following day, Jojo returns to the ruins of his home to check for the mask, but he does not find it. As he and Arena leave, he notices a man following them. The man later reveals himself. He pokes Jojo's lungs very hard. This causes energy to run through him as his broken bones heal. He introduces himself as Baron Zeppeli. He teaches Jojo the art of Sendo, which involves harvesting Hammond energy and using it for your purpose. He demonstrates this in a lake by taking deep breath, which generates energy, and using it to divide a rock. He explains to Jojo that the stone mask and Dio survive, and he wants to destroy them both. As Jojo touched a branch while pondering on Arena's safety, the branch bloomed. As a result of his energy, Baron noticed and knows Jojo will be talented, and he starts to train him in the art of Sendo. Meanwhile, Dio recovers gradually by sucking human blood brought to him by Jack the Ripper. Baron tells Jojo about how he discovered the stone mask during his youth alongside his father and his crew, and how the stone mask corrupted his father and killed all the crew members, but he was saved as the sun broke and burned him. Robert interrupts their training with the news about Dio's location. Baron reveals that this mission will be Jojo's last training. In a tunnel, Jack the Ripper intercepts them and blocks the way out of the tunnel. Baron explains that he is now a zombie. While in battle with Jack, Baron keeps teaching Jojo. Finally, he lets Jojo deliver the final attack on Jack. Jojo succeeds and conquers him. In the village of Wind Night Lords, a place formerly used for training knights, now a prison holding 517 prisoners. While Jojo, Robert, and Baron are traveling through the village, a young boy named Poco snatches their bag and starts climbing a hill. Jojo stops him, but they discover the boy was hypnotized to do so. The sun sets, and they realize that they are in a graveyard. Zombies start emerging from the ground. Dio reveals himself and a battle unfolds. During the battle, Dio uses a special technique to freeze Baron's arm, making him unable to use his Hammond. As Dio is about to deliver a finishing blow, Jojo quickly blocks his attack but gets his hand frozen in the process. Dio summons two powerful knights, Tarukus and Blueford. Robert uses a technique, releasing heat from his body to warm up Baron's hand. Meanwhile, Blueford takes a liking to Jojo's skills and faces him in a battle which leads them underwater, where Jojo manages to dominate. Blueford is intrigued by Jojo's fighting skills soon enough. Bluford uses his hair to trap Jojo to a tree and proceeds to strike him down with his sword. But Jojo uses his sword to transfer Heyman into Bluford, which loosens the grip of hair on him. During the battle, Jojo notices the pure spirit of Bluford. He does not dodge his last attack, which surprises Bluford and everyone. Bluford expresses his surprise at Jojo's actions and is truly touched. Jojo channels his Heyman through the ground as it ravages Bluford's body. Bluford gives Jojo his sword before he finally disintegrates. This act of Bluford disgusts Tarukus, and he crushes his remaining pieces and starts attacking Jojo and the others. Jojo and Baron use their Heyman to generate a magnetic field that summons the dried leaves on the floor, and they fly away with it. On their way, Baron reveals he discovered Heyman from a doctor in the port of India, and he traveled to Tibet's Salavine River in search of the doctor's master, Thonpeti, and trains under him. Unfortunately, Tarukus doesn't give up as he continues to chase them. The Heymen from the Leaf Glider keep repelling him, but not for long as they land on the old knight's training ground. Tarukus traps Jojo inside with him, using an ancient deathmatch tool. Two chains attached to their necks, with the keys of each other exchanged among themselves. Jojo tries to channel Heyman through the chain, but unfortunately it does not work. Baron and the rest try to get in, but the door is too thick. They discover a lever that can open the door from outside. Poco sees a tiny hole that he can crawl through and open the lever. He remembers how he was always bullied and he draws strength from that and climbs through the hole. Poco successfully opens the door with the lever after sustaining an injury from Tarukus' attack. A flashback scene is shown in Tibet 1863, where Baron still trains under Thonpeti. Thonpeti warns him that his death is near. As he proceeds in the training, Baron tells Thonpeti to check the remaining time he has. Back to recent time. Baron busts in and meets Tarukus, strangling Jojo with a chain to his neck. Baron quickly rushes in to help Jojo, but Tarukus traps him in the chain and slices him into half with it, while breaking Jojo's neck in the process. Jojo and Baron's half regain consciousness to the surprise of Tarukus. Baron weakly transfers his Heyman into Jojo. He powers up, breaks the chain, and defeats Tarukus easily. Jojo wails bitterly as he holds Baron's half in his hand before he dies. In a castle, a woman holding her child is seen kneeling and begging Dio for mercy. She decides to give Dio her life in exchange for her child's protection, but Dio turns her into a zombie and she eats her baby alive. What a sneaky way to fulfill a deal. Jojo, Robert, and Poco journey into Wind Night Lot. They encounter a man on the way that Poco refers to as Mr. Adams. Adam turns out to be a zombie and tries to attack Poco, but Jojo saves him and eliminates Adam. They quickly figure that the village has been overrun by zombies. A man named Dyer approaches them and attacks Jojo with a special technique, but Jojo is quick to evade it. Dyer is impressed and tells Jojo that he just wants to know how well Baron trained him. Another man named Strizo approaches them and tosses Jojo the letter Baron sent to them, requesting for their help to eliminating the mask. Master Thonpeti arrives. He asks for Baron but quickly figures that he is dead. Meanwhile, Dio is seen holding Poco's sister captive. Poco finally arrives home, but his father smacks him for running off. Poco asks of his sister, but his father tells him that she went out to look for him. Meanwhile, in the castle, Dio offers Poco's sister an opportunity to become one of his zombies and remain young forever. She slaps him, refusing his offer. This vexes Dio and he leaves her to one of his zombies called Doobie to finish her off while he leaves the room. Jojo saves her. Baron's friends are impressed by Jojo's excellent fighting skills. Dio is shocked to see Jojo alive. Dio's creatures all want a part of Jojo, but Dio decides to face Jojo himself. As the battle is about to start, Dyer interferes and decides to face Dio. He uses the same technique on Dio, but Dio freezes him and smashes him into pieces. With Dyer lost strength, he shoots a Heyman-filled rose into Dio's eyes before he finally freezes and shatters. This vexes Dio. He summons his zombies to fight Jojo's friends. They hold the zombies off while Jojo faces Dio. Jojo uses Dio's injured eye to his advantage and uses the sword that Bluford gave him to cut off Dio's arm and cut him into half, but surprisingly, Dio manages to freeze him, stopping his flow of Hymen and bring out a major artery in his neck. While Dio threatens Jojo with the artery, Jojo's sword warms up in the fire behind Dio, and in due time, he transfers the heat and uses it to unfreeze himself. He lands an attack, but Dio is quick to freeze his arm again. But he channels enough Hymen to unfreeze it and rushes in to land an attack on Dio. After fierce resistance from both parties, Jojo emerges winner. His attack disintegrates Dio as he falls down a cliff. Dio shoots out a powerful beam from his eye which Jojo evades luckily. Jojo cries as he watches Dio disintegrates before he faints. Robert rushes towards him and shouts in happiness as Jojo saves the world from Dio's ruin. Will Dio return? Find out in the next video.